Or many times life slows you down on purpose. When I realized waiting wasn't punishment, there was a long period in my life when waiting felt like a sentence. I was doing what I believed was everything, right? Waking up early, putting in the hours, trying to stay consistent. Yet nothing around me seemed to change. Days blended together, effort turned into quiet exhaustion, and a question kept returning no matter how much I tried to ignore it. Do is any of these even matter? I used to look for answers everywhere, reading about how to stay positive in tough times and reminding myself that patience was a virtue. But patience, when you don't understand it, feels less like wisdom and more like being forgotten. What made it harder was watching others move forward while I stayed still. People I once stood beside were suddenly ahead of me. New jobs, visible progress, recognition. Meanwhile, my own work remained unseen. I kept showing up, kept trying, but the results refused to arrive on my schedule. I told myself I should be grateful. That comparison was unhealthy. That everyone has their own timing. Still, late at night, when things were quiet, I felt the weight of waiting press on my chest. I wondered if I was falling behind because I was doing something wrong, or worse, because I wasn't meant to move ahead at all. During that time, my thoughts became my loudest obstacle. I tried learning how to control negative thoughts, but they weren't always negative in the obvious sense. They were subtle. Questions disguised as logic. What if you're wasting your best years? What if this effort never pays off? What if slowing down means you're losing? I kept my doubts too, myself, smiling on the outside while feeling uncertain inside. I believed that strength meant pushing harder, moving faster, forcing progress. I didn't yet understand that sometimes pressure doesn't accelerate growth. Sometimes it cracks it. I remember one specific moment when this realization began to form. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. I was working late, repeating the same task I had done countless times before, and I felt completely disconnected from urgency. For the first time, I didn't feel like quitting. I felt tired of rushing. That was new. It made me reflect on how mindset shapes your life, not in a motivational way, but in a practical one. I saw how my obsession with speed had slowly stolen my sense of peace. I was moving, but not grounded. Working, but not growing. That's when the idea crossed my mind for the first time. Maybe life wasn't delaying me. Maybe it was shaping me. Maybe this slow season wasn't a mistake or a punishment, but a necessary process. I didn't fully believe it yet. It felt uncomfortable to even consider. But the thought stayed, and sometimes that's how change begins. Not with certainty, but with a quiet question that refuses to leave. You alone. Understanding that slow seasons are not empty once that thought settled in, I started looking at my days differently, not with optimism, but with curiosity. I stopped asking why things weren't moving faster and began asking what this slow season was actually teaching me. At first, the answer wasn't clear. My routines looked ordinary. My progress felt invisible. But something subtle was happening inside me. I was becoming more aware, more honest with myself. I noticed how much of my stress came from wanting results before I was ready to carry them. I had spent so much time reading about how to stay positive in tough times without realizing that positivity doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. Sometimes it means staying present long enough to understand why things feel heavy. I also began to see how silence plays a role in growth. When nothing external is changing, you're left alone with your thoughts, habits, and patterns. That can be uncomfortable. There's no applause, no validation, no clear sign that you're on the right path. I used to fill that silence with noise. Social media, constant updates, other people's success stories. I thought learning how to control negative thoughts meant drowning them out. In reality, it meant listening carefully and deciding which ones deserved my attention. tension. Slowness forced me to confront parts of myself I had ignored when life felt busy. What surprised me most was how much discipline developed naturally during this period. Not the strict, aggressive kind, but a quiet consistency. Showing up even when nothing exciting happened. Continuing even when no one noticed. This is when how mindset shapes your life stopped being abstract. My mindset wasn't changing because I was thinking better thoughts, but because my actions were slowly building trust within myself. I wasn't chasing outcomes anymore. I was learning to respect the process. There were still moments of doubt. Days when I felt behind, outdated, or forgotten. On those days, I reminded myself that growth doesn't always announce itself. Roots grow underground, unseen, long before anything appears on the surface. That image stayed with me. It helped me understand how to stay hopeful when struggling doesn't come. From seeing progress, but from trusting that effort given consistently still matters. Even when the results are delayed. Looking back now, I can see that this phase was never empty. It was quiet, yes, but full. Full of small corrections, internal adjustments, and lessons that could only be learned without pressure. If life had moved faster, I would have missed them. Slowing down wasn't a loss of momentum. It was preparation. Learning that rushing breaks more than it builds as time passed. I began to notice a pattern I had ignored for years. Every time I rushed, something broke. Sometimes it was my focus. Other times it was my confidence. And often it was the quality of what I was trying to build. I used to believe that speed was proof of commitment. If I moved fast, worked harder and pushed more, then results would have no choice but to appear. But life kept showing me the same lesson in different forms. When I rushed, I skipped steps that actually mattered. That's when I truly started to understand how mindset shapes your life. In a very practical way, a rushed mindset creates rushed outcomes. I saw this clearly in my daily work. On days when I tried to do everything quickly, I made more mistakes. I missed details. I felt tense and impatient. And even when something was finished, it didn't feel solid. It felt fragile, like it could fall apart at any moment. Slowing down felt uncomfortable at first, almost like I was doing less. But in reality, I was doing things more intentionally. I wasn't wasting energy fixing what I broke by rushing. I was building it right the first time. That shift changed how I related to effort itself. This was also the moment when I stopped confusing pressure with progress. I realized that constantly pushing myself harder wasn't making me stronger. It was making me tired. I had spent so much time trying to learn how to stay positive in tough times that I ignored the fact that exhaustion distorts perspective. When you're drained, everything feels heavier than it really is. Slowing down gave me space to breathe, to think clearly, and to recognize that patience isn't passive. It's active restraint. My thoughts changed too. Before, my mind was always racing ahead, worried about outcomes, comparing to calculating how far behind I felt. Learning how to control negative thoughts didn't mean eliminating them. It meant not letting them rush my decisions. I learned to pause before reacting, to stay with the task in front of me instead of jumping to the next one. That mental stillness didn't make me slower. It made me sharper. What surprised me most was how much strength came from this approach. I used to think patience was for people who lacked ambition. Now I saw it as discipline in its purest form. It takes strength to wait, strength to stay consistent without immediate reward, strength to trust that what you're building will hold when it's finally tested. In this slow, steady rhythm, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Confidence that wasn't dependent on speed or approval. When waiting started to feel like strength, there came a point when waiting stopped feeling like a delay and started feeling like a decision. I wasn't frozen anymore. I was choosing to stay, choosing to repeat the work even when the excitement was gone. That distinction changed everything. Before, waiting felt like something life forced on me. Now, It felt like something I was using intentionally. I began to understand that how to stay positive in tough times isn't about convincing yourself that everything is fine, but about knowing why you're still standing where you are. During this phase, I noticed a deeper calm settling in. My days weren't easier, but they were steadier. I wasn't constantly measuring myself against others anymore. I stopped asking how long it would take and started asking if I was doing the work properly. That shift protected my energy. It allowed me to focus without feeling rushed by invisible deadlines. Slowly, my confidence stopped coming from hope and started coming from repetition. That's when how mindset shapes your life became something I could feel, not just understand. I also became more patient with myself. When mistakes happened, I didn't panic. I corrected them. When progress felt slow, I didn't quit. Primera stagiaire. Learning how to control negative thoughts meant recognizing that impatience often disguises itself as urgency. Once I stopped feeding that urgency, my thoughts lost their grip on me. I didn't need everything to happen now. I just needed to keep going. What surprised me most was how others began to notice the change. Before I did, people didn't comment on speed or results. They commented on consistency, on calm, on reliability. That's when I realized patience doesn't just change outcomes. It changes how you're perceived. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can wait without losing yourself. That confidence can't be rushed. At that moment, I understood something important. Sometimes life slows you down, not to stop you, but to teach you how to move without breaking. Waiting wasn't weakness anymore. It was strength under control. Why, what grows slowly lasts the longest. Looking back now, I can't see how much I needed that slow season, even though I resisted it at the time. If life had given me quick results, I would have built something fragile. I would have confused speed with strength and movement with meaning. Waiting forced me to learn things I could never have learned while rushing. It taught me restraint. It taught me consistency. Most importantly, it taught me trust. Trust in the process and trust in myself. That's when I truly understood how mindset shapes your life isn't about optimism alone, but about alignment between patience and action. What changed wasn't just my passé, but my relationship with effort. I stopped demanding immediate proof that my work mattered. I learned how to stay hopeful when struggling by focusing on what I could control, showing up, staying present, and doing the work well. Hope stopped being something I waited for and became something I practiced daily. Even on quiet days, even on days when nothing seemed to move, I knew I was growing in ways that couldn't yet be. I also realized that patience filters intention. When you stay long enough without applause, you discover why you're really doing what you do. I stopped chasing outcomes and started valuing depth. That shift removed a lot of inner pressure. Learning how to control negative thoughts became easier because I wasn't constantly fighting time anymore. I accepted that some things need silence, repetition, and space to mature. Just like roots underground, strength often develops where no one is watching. Now, when I think about the moments that once made me feel behind, I see them as moments that protected me. Life didn't slow me down to punish me. It slowed me down to prepare me. And that preparation changed the quality of everything I built afterward. I still enjoy listening to a motivational story in English or a positive thinking story with moral. I still believe in encouragement and inspiration, but I no longer confuse speed with success. Real growth happens quietly, steadily, and on its own timeline. If you're in a season where things feel slow, heavy, or unfair, I hope this reminds you of something important. Waiting doesn't mean you're failing. It often means you're becoming someone strong enough to hold what's coming. Everything that truly lasts takes time. And when it finally rises, it won't need to rush. It will stand firm.